another episode of The Last Week Out. My name is Chudsy, aka fought a man for a sombrero once, Wubsy. To my left is Vince Lombardi.
Football champion.
He was 18 minutes early to breakfast, and then he texted David and I and said, "Yo, am I too early for this thing?" And I was like, "Nah, Vince Lombardi, it's all good."
Chad, who is Vince Lombardi?
Vince Lombardi is was the head coach of the Packers, and one of his most famous things that he ever said or quotes would be, "If you ain't 15 minutes early, you're late."
Wow, dude.
Wow.
Fucking give me an applause on that one,
Yeah,
dude.
give him the applause. I had no idea. I thought he was just saying a fun name this morning.
I try to live my life by that, dude. If I'm 15 minutes late, then I'm right on time, dude. That's
you ain't
what
first,
I
you're
do.
last.
Well, that don't make no damn sense. You could be second, third, hell, you could even be fourth.
Doesn't even sound like something I'd say.
All right, you be quiet until I'm done doing introductions. You hear me? First off, I want to apologize for last week because I had a potty mouth, dude. It was bad. It was really bad. So my listeners out there, if you're part of the Catholic matriarchy or any kind of religious, thing,
Or just a decent human
or
being.
just a decent human being who doesn't like cursing, I am so sorry for last week, and I am gonna do my best to not let that happen again, and I promise you that. So, Vince Lombardi to my left, Dr. David Slack to my right on the ones and twos.
That.
Then you know me, Chudsy, and we got a special guest today, dude. And every guest is special, but this guest is extra special, dude. And him and I have been going back and forth. He's bald, but I have a beautiful head of hair, but he's got everything else I've ever wanted, dude. And all I've got that he wants is hair, dude. But he rocks the bald head so good, dude. And he's just, and to just stop with all the theatrics for a second, he's a person that's a part of our community, and for our listeners, our community is that of the sober variety, and he's just been someone that I've always looked up to, and he's one of those dudes when you see him, you're intimidated by him because he's so goddamn good looking, dude, and he's just he's shredded. Well, I go with the cursing, I'm sorry. He's shredded and breaded, dude, and he's a good looking dude, and he is a CEO, an entrepreneur, and just a light. He's the beam of light in a dark world, and his name is Mr. Estil Wallace.
Woo! Hey, and so about 5 minutes ago, right before we started, I was like, "Hey, Chad, you gonna remember the plugs?" And he's like, "Yeah, dude, I got it. Leave me alone."
Hey, let me tell you something right now, dude. I am Commander Coyote, and you know what, dude? That's okay, man, and I'm going to do those plugs right now, dude. So this here podcast is brought to you by Bud Out E-Cigs, dude. And let me tell you something.
Bud, good.
I hate when you do that when I'm talking, dude.
That's the drop for the plug, dude.
Oh,
Dang,
okay.
Bud,
Well,
good
thanks
big
for
Bud.
telling me about that, dude. Awesome. So Bud Out E-Cigs, dude. They got an online store, and they got everything you need. Hardware, juice, memes. They don't got memes, but you could... David, get memes on the website for the people, dude. People want to see memes, dude.
Done.
And guess, check this out, dude. You put in a promo code last week out. Anthony, what are they gonna get if they put in that promo code?
You guys will get 20% off anything you buy, and you can ship it directly to your door. It's like Amazon for your vape needs.
Wow.
Because you can't get vape stuff on Amazon, dude. I've tried. Trust me. And just, get on there, dude. 20% off. It's a great deal. That Lo-Fi Banger, our intro music, is brought to you by DJ Devin Hancock, and all our banners and artwork is brought to you by Sissy Art. And you can follow them on Instagram, and they got some really cool stuff going on. Now I'm going to pass it to Vince.
Okay. Thank you. Estil, thanks for coming, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, seriously. I know you're a busy guy, and so I appreciate you fitting us into our schedule. Breakfast was great. I know a lot about you, but I'm going to act a bit naive to a little bit of your background just because it's best for our listeners. So I'll ask you rhetorical seeming questions.
Sure, anything you like.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about where you come from. Where were you born?
Ooh, we're going to start way at the...
Let's
go way back.
From the very beginning.
Where were you?
To a time long ago in a galaxy far away.
I was born in the sticks, a place called Clinton, Missouri. My biological parents are alcoholics. Never really straightened out. Was left in foster care. Not sure the age, somewhere between 6 and 9 months old. I don't know. and then was adopted at about a year and a half, maybe 20 months. Was adopted by my grandparents on my dad's side.
Okay. Was that out in Clinton, Missouri?
That was in Clinton.
Okay. Did you have siblings that were in foster care with you?
No. I have a year later, approximately the same month, or I'm born in October, so either in September, October of the next year, 78, my biological mother gave birth to another son, to her recollection that it was a boy, but it was closed adoption, never been able to find him.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's your half brother is out there somewhere.
Either half or whole. She claimed it was my biological father's, that he's a whole brother. Of course, he claims it's not.
So is Wallace your grandfather on your dad's side?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So Clinton, Missouri, you grew up there. You went to school there?
No. I grew up out here.
Okay.
I was adopted just before I was 2, moved out here. So I did pre-K, kindergarten, through high school, everything out here.
How were you as a student?
Terrible.
Really?
Yeah.
You're a smart guy.
Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but no, we never cared for scholastics. Was interested in music, skateboarding.
Did you ever get the teachers coming down and telling your parents, "Oh, he has so much potential. He just doesn't apply himself."
yeah.
Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah, that was the talk. That was the regular talk. I'm older. I'm 41 now. So when I was a little kid, we didn't have the internet yet. So report cards had to be walked home.
Yeah.
There was some buffer of like, report cards didn't come to this week.
Yeah. They went missing.
You could get away
constantly.
with that a little bit. Not too long, but.
So did bad in school. Did you stay in school? Did you finish?
I did not. I failed the 5th grade.
Wow.
I failed the 5th grade in public school and was put into private school, private Christian school.
Were they like diagnosing you with stuff for the reason, or were you just kind of like an unruly kid?
Yeah, it's just a tough kid. They never diagnosed me with anything. I never saw a therapist or anything.
No.
Ended up at parochial school, 5th grade through sophomore year, and I declared I would not return. I'd finally had my fill, and returned to public school, went to Arcadia High School, where I rejoined all my classmates from my childhood. A lot of those kids I still hung out with over the years, but this is my neighborhood. But I went back to school, did junior year, and most of my senior year I did not graduate Arcadia High School.
Yeah. Skateboarding, degenerate lifestyle.
Yeah, I was a blackout drinker by sophomore, junior year, like end of my sophomore year, I was a blackout drinker.
Who'd you learn that from? You
I
just
just
picked
drank.
it up and just drank.
Yeah.
Video games.
Yeah. Well, the older kids, were you hanging out with the older kids?
Not particularly.
No?
No.
Were you
I
a
have
popular kid?
So I have three uncles plus my biological father in my household. So I grew up having basically 3 brothers and an absentee biological father. So by law, all 4 of them are my brothers.
Did your dad come in the picture intermittently between all of this?
Yeah, his name's Scott. I never called him dad. My adopted parents I always called mom and dad.
Right.
I didn't know I was adopted till I was 7.
Okay.
So as I got older, yeah, there were some random meetings. Mm-hmm. I got to meet him that first time when I was 7, and then later, I don't know, when I was maybe 12 or something. Then again, I guess I must have been 18 or 19, and I dosed him one time actually.
What does that mean?
I gave him some really strong LSD.
Holy shit, dude.
I didn't really know the guy. I knew he's...
Wait, like on purpose, or you slipped it into his drink?
No, he took it
Okay,
willingly.
okay.
He took it willingly. But he's been in and out of recovery my whole life. Never been present in my life. I really don't know the guy. Which is interesting because my parents that adopted me, they'd always warned me, like, hey, you should be careful around alcohol. We've got alcoholism in our family. Your biological father's an alcoholic. And so I knew what AA was, and I'd heard of the Salvation Army and things like that. And I'd always, whenever I thought of him, that's what I equated. I equated it to a bunch of weird old guys that smoke and drink coffee and don't stay sober.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's just some weird shit for old people that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Kids are usually, this is something that I'm picking up on the more I talk to people, is kids are like incredibly resilient. And so were you resentful as a kid at this man?
Not really consciously as a kid, not until my alcoholism and drug addiction really took hold. Then I started getting pretty pissed.
Yeah.
When I started trying to peel back the veil and understand why my life was so fucked up, that's when I started to blame. and look for answers where there were none.
Right.
Oh, it's his fault. So
Fuck you. You're not my dad.
He's the reason I got a receding hairline at 19.
right. It's pretty close, yeah.
So you are dropping out of high school. What's your ambition at that time in your life? Anything?
No, not skateboard.
Yeah.
Go to all the places I saw in 411 videos.
Yeah.
Old school.
Old school.
Who was your favorite skateboarders back in the day?
Oh, Jamie Thomas.
Okay.
Ed Templeton.
Leap of Faith.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah, Ed Templeton's cool. That's Toy Machine stuff. I
Yeah,
remember I got
yeah.
a signature from him back when I was a kid.
Yeah, Bam Margera when he was amateur.
CKY2K stuff.
Yeah, spent a summer skateboarding with Jim Greco and Ali Boala.
What, dude? That's sick.
Yeah, they're
nuts.
I don't know what those guys are up to today. But
Alcoholism.
maybe I honestly have no idea. But we drank a lot then. All we did was drink and skate. And there are times looking back at those years of my life that there was fun in it. It's not like it was all misery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that way for a lot of people. But by and large, I was always trying to find a way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was always trying to find a way out of it and couldn't piece that together. No real ambitions. I wasn't good enough to go pro at skateboarding. I was pretty good, but not good enough to make a living at it. And I wasn't really good at anything else. And I had full-blown alcoholism, so there was no, I didn't go to college. I didn't have any trade. I didn't have.
Were you were you dating at all, or just kind of being a floozy?
More on the floozy side. Really, I don't know if you want to get into all this stuff, but my relationships with women were very bad until I got sober. It was literally doing a sex inventory for the first time. Complete paradigm shift. Hadn't had a spiritual awakening of any kind.
Right.
Literally did a fifth step and was treated women differently the next day moving forward and have sense.
That's powerful stuff. Yeah, we'll get into sort of the shift. And so how long did you drink and use drugs? You're in your 13, 14, 15, dropping out of school, skateboarding. Where does that lifestyle kind of take you throughout the country? Do you continuously move? What sort of happened during all that time?
18, almost 19. It was sort of a mutual exit from my home of origin. Yeah. with my parents, my grandparents, and a friend of mine and I, we both left Arizona together in my car. It was a 1990 Ford Escort, white hatchback, pretty sweet. And we lived homeless in San Diego for a while.
What does that mean? Just
out of a car.
Literally out of a car?
Yeah, the car still ran at that point. So
it's a decent car, shitty home.
Yeah. Well, anybody that's ever lived out of a car knows you don't really sleep in a car.
Not comfortably.
You can. No, sleeping in a car is like having sex in a car. It sounds a lot better on paper than it is in actual practice. Yeah.
But any place to be homeless, San Diego's got to be the spot.
Any place to have sex is.
Touche on both. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, well, not the worst place geographically. Look, the United States is a level 4 income country, so it's you could be homeless anywhere within this country and not be too bad. And then you start adding geographic region of a place like San Diego that doesn't get hotter than 90 and doesn't get colder than 50. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in context. And so how long do you do that?
About a year. Traveled up and down the West Coast. Stayed in Santa Rosa for a while. Stayed in San Bernardino for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to a rainbow gathering. If you're familiar with these things,
I don't know what that is.
Hippie gatherings it's like the people that go, there's a subculture of people that go to Burning Man and go and used to follow the dead and fish.
Yeah, our guest last week was a avid dead follower.
So he's probably been to at least one Rainbow Family gathering.
Okay.
But they're big hippie gatherings. They're usually around 4th of July, and they're massive, thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of people.
So did you did that once though? You weren't a big follower?
No, very haphazardly. I'm not really a hippie. We were in Santa Rosa, stealing watermelons, cooking ramen in the park, sleeping at the skate park, just skating every day, and getting high and drinking. And some guys we were smoking weed with were like, dude, you guys going to this thing in the woods? And we're like, what thing in the woods?
Yeah, I think we are.
I'm interested already.
Will there be drugs there?
Yeah, so they were just like, yeah, it's a bunch of hippies. They smoke a bunch of weed and they take hallucinogens, and yeah, it lasts for a few weeks. It's this like festival thing. We're like, cool. Thought it'd be a few hundred people. We got out there. It was like 50,000 people. My mind was blown. My buddy and I that drove there together, we parked my car. We went down and we set up. Nobody uses money. They all trade, right?
And barter.
Yeah. So we lay out like a towel because we don't have any blankets. Because we're not hippies. We're like grungy, homeless skateboarder city kids. So we like throw out a towel, like a beach towel, with like old skate shoes and shit. And people just start handing us LSD and mushrooms, and we start frying. Dave was like, I'm gonna go check out some other stuff. I'm like, cool. And we got separated for like 5 or 6 days. When I finally made it back to the car, and I mean, you guys have been to a drum circle?
Yes.
All right, so drum circle's like 400 or 500 drums deep.
Oh, okay. I've never been
Naked
to that
men,
sort
naked
of drum
women,
circle.
people dancing around these huge bonfires, and there'd be 3-4 of these circles going as soon as the sun went down. It was bonkers. I'd never seen anything like this. I was not really exposed to the hippie culture.
It was like actually
then it was
4
like-
people, but you're just super high.
Right. Yeah, by the time I made it back to the car, he was asleep in the car, and I was like, thank God. And we just started driving towards Portland. We were literally like driving over the Burnside Bridge, and he woke up and he's like, dude, are we still in the woods? And I was like, nope. We're almost at Burnside Skate Park, buddy. We're going to go take sink baths and get something to eat.
So fast forward me through the next few years, because I know your story consists of pretty tragic alcoholism, which I relate to.
A lot of rando occurrences.
Yeah.
A lot of heartbreaking, otherwise unmonumental moments.
Yeah.
Like nothing noteworthy particularly, except that you know when you hit bottom and you just gotta camp out,
just live
make
there.
acquaintances. Yeah. I did that for years. The last couple of years of my drinking and using, I was trying to get sober like 2 to 3 times a month.
What were you trying to do to get sober?
I was trying to just smoke weed or not do any drugs or drink at all. I was trying to, let's see if I could stay sober for 2 weeks. Let's see if I could drink malt liquor, but not do any other drugs. Let me see if I can. I would try to come up with a million different concoctions.
Did you have anybody around you that was modeling for you how to functionalize this stuff?
No. Didn't know anybody that was sober.
Yeah, I remember feeling like that. I was just kind of winging it, but I knew that I didn't want to use.
Yeah, I felt like I was the only person trying to stay sober out of the people I knew, because everybody I knew was dying, going to prison, or was in as bad or worse shape than I was. I mean, I knew that there was a D-Day was coming. Like I had to. It was like an army, like a ghost army after me. As you know, you guys know what it feels like.
Yeah, well,
in the last days of using, like I knew this somehow or other, this was gonna go bad and it was gonna end.
I'm about to use the title of the movie in the movie right here, but take me to the last week out.
Last week out, I get. All right, I'll tell you the long version. I guess I'll try and shorten where I can. I decide I'm walking down the street. I've just traded an expensive mountain bike. By expensive, I mean probably like $5,000 or $6,000 mountain bike for
pretty expensive.
Yeah, that's very expensive.
Yeah, for in the world of mountain biking, it's like a real bike.
Yeah, that's like a decently functioning car.
Yeah, I traded it for a quarter ounce of methamphetamine, $50, and a pocket knife. And
you make them throw in the pocket knife. You're like, give me that knife.
Yeah,
I'm gonna need.
I need a knife, right? Couldn't afford a gun. I'm not a very good fighter, so I'm walking down the street as loaded as I could get myself, and the feeling is not in my stomach that I've had since I was a little kid, walking a bad report card home, for example.
Yeah, how old are you?
When this last week, I'm 26.
Okay.
26 in 5 or 6 months, and this feeling that my life is not what it was supposed to be, and that it's instead of, and I couldn't even articulate what my life was supposed to be at that point, but I knew I was so far removed from it, and I was just disgusted and remorseful and misanthropic and suicidal, borderline, we'll say suicidal. I never actually attempted, although I thought about it a lot of times. And as I was walking down the street, I couldn't shake that feeling. I couldn't put enough drugs in my body to shake that feeling. And I knew the gig was up. I knew something had to change. I either had to pony up and end my life, or try and figure out what getting sober looked like, because I couldn't understand how else to manage. And I ended up trying to get in the Salvation Army. I couldn't get in right away. It's not like you just walk up and they take you. I called down there and they were like, that sounds great. You need to drop a clean UA, and we only do intakes on Tuesdays.
Yeah, dude.
And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, it took everything in my soul, what's left of a soul, to pick up the phone and call you. Now you're telling me I have to do all this shit. So they gave me the parameters. I'm sleeping outside. I'm picking cigarette butts in front of a Circle K on 44th Street in Osborne.
Oof.
It's my hood too. It's where I grew up. And I'm picking cigarette butts. And a kid that I went to high school with, his family's pretty successful. They run an AC business, still do. And he had just gotten out of prison about a year before that. So he's buff, dude. He's driving a big work truck. He's clean cut. He's working at the family business. He's doing great. He pulls up and he sees me and he's like, Estil? And I'm like, hey.
What's up, dude?
I'm so happy to see you right now.
Hey, you got $1?
And he asked me how I was doing, and I was like, you know what, man? For the first time, I'm trying to get sober. And he was like, for real? And I said, yeah, man, I'm going to go to the Salvation Army as soon as I could drop a clean UA. I'm hoping by Tuesday. And he was like, all right, man, cool. Puts me in the car, took me to his house, let me sleep on his couch for like 4 nights.
Oh, nice.
I watched them eat, drink, and be merry, and I did not engage in drinking or smoking the bong with them. And I was able to get into the Salvation Army. He gave me $1.25. What was it, $1.50? $1.25, I think, to ride the bus down.
Yeah.
And I checked in. My UA was still hot after 6 days. So for anybody listening that thinks they can pull off a clean UA in 3 days, that's not true.
It's a myth.
It is a myth, and I thought that for so long. 3 days, drinking bleach, taking niacin.
Right.
Anyway, after being there 9 days, or being in there 3 days, I had to stay sober. 6 days, got in. I'm there. I'm 9 days sober. Full blown. I mean, you could call it a panic attack, but it's really me unable to deal with the overwhelming reality of my own life. Tears streaming down my face, guts twisting into knots. And I packed my shit and I left. On my way out the door, Chris King actually tried to stop me.
No kidding. Chris is a mutual friend of ours. We all know Chris.
Yeah, he's executive director over at 5A. He's my oldest friend in sobriety. He was like, dude, there's nothing out there for you. And I was like, fuck this place. Mm-hmm. And I walked out the door. I went and I got high with this biker chick I know. And when I got high that time, the drugs worked again, and it felt like this. And all that overwhelming anxiety, the remorse, the guilt, the shame, didn't go away, but it really toned down. Mm-hmm. And the drug was being effective again. It did what I needed it to do, which is to be able to tolerate my own existence. So it did that, and I got picked up on ASU campus a few days later on a children's mountain bike looking for a better bicycle to steal.
So this was not a $5,000 bike.
Nope. No. Was reintroduced to 12-step fellowships in Durango jail.
Nice.
And yeah, checked into the solution when I got out of jail. Backpack with one change of dirty clothes, a pair of bolt cutters, and a kitchen knife.
Oh my god!
They let you keep the bolt cutters?
Yeah, they gave them back to me.
Nice.
Super weird.
For our listeners, the solution is a sober living. We call it a halfway house. As it's saved a lot of people. It's actually not around anymore, but the 5A, the company that owns it, actually is. And I know you've done a lot of work for them as well. So you check in a solution, and then why did what happened to you in the Salvation Army not happen again? Why didn't that awareness just pile on you? Because you said something that was like, you're sitting in the Salvation Army and you had what you can call a panic attack, but you kind of look at it as like the reality of your life showed up.
Well, just you were saying about the Salvation Army, like you after a few days there, you're like, fuck. I feel like that after being there for an hour, so sober, just going to visit someone. I'm like, fuck this place.
Hey, watch your language, please.
What was different was while I was in Durango jail, I heard a guy who brought in a 12-step meeting share his experience. And even though externally our circumstances were very different, he's what we call a high bottom, and I'm more of middle to lower bottom. He shared very specifically about the feelings, about how he felt, why he couldn't stay sober, because he fucking hated himself and he hated the world around him. The longer he stayed sober, the sicker he got, until he finally gave in and drank, which alleviated the pressure. But then he couldn't drink responsibly, so then his life would spiral out of control after a few months, and then he'd get sober again. And as he went round and round that cycle verbally, and it was able to articulate it, that connected with me. I'd never heard anybody talk about it before. I'd never said it out loud before. I literally didn't know that anybody else was experiencing the nightmare I was experiencing. To hear him to share it, talk about it openly, and then name it, I was kind of blown away.
Yeah, man.
And then they gave me a big book. So I'm in Durango reading this little tiny book, being like having like aha moment after aha moment. Like, have you guys fucking seen this thing? Written in the 30s, it's written about me. You know, I'm having one of those newcomer moments.
That man is on fire.
Yeah, so that was the flimsy reed, so to speak, that I was hanging on to. That was my anchor point, was this guy's experience. He clearly knew the darkness that I was living with. And I knew
it's interesting because some people are just more equipped for like living on the street or going to jail or prison, those things.
Sure.
Like I'm not, you know, but if I relate to like the cycle that you're talking about is what we can all kind of relate to.
Yeah. And ultimately that's what I believe the problem is with alcoholics and drug addicts. I think many people suffer for existentially to some degree or other, but when their default is substance use, then it's a recipe for death. If you can't discover and fulfill your own purpose in life, and the only thing you can do to not feel that, to not engage in that existential suffering, is to get loaded, dude, I have bad news. This ends bad for you and everyone you know. I mean, there's not a happy ending in that story. It's awful. And you guys know from personal experience and from how many people you've watched struggle with this. In order to find peace and lasting recovery, I had to discover for myself and pursue at least my purpose.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's huge, and that's something that I think for a lot of us we are focusing on, you know, and especially in longer term recovery. And I know that we have a lot to talk to you about as far as the things that you've experienced, because, you know, that's just the first step in your life was like, okay, now you've recovered from alcoholism that's beating the shit out of you. And then we know that, you know, there's been quite a trek after that, and that's going to be some really powerful stuff. We're at the 29-minute mark. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and we'll just pick up from here and kind of go through a few things going on. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll be right back.
See you in 2 minutes and 37 seconds.
Yeah.
And we're back, and David's trying to box me
I
out
didn't
again,
touch
dude.
the volume,
He's
dude.
trying. I see your pointy little fingers, dude.
Yeah, I'm
just
moving
trying
it
to
down.
move knobs around, dude, and box me out, bro. I see what you're trying to do, and you know what? That's okay, dude. That's okay. And I was gonna say some other stuff. We're coming back from break, and I'm just sitting here listening and having a good time. So I'm gonna pass it back to Mr. Vince Lombardi, dude.
Yeah, thank you. So we took a break. Estil's covered a lot of ground, and I've known you, Estil, for 6-some years, and I know that there's a couple of things I really wanted to touch on that you've gone through, and we talked before. And so you get into recovery, and that's where we were at last. Your life seems pretty small, fit in a backpack with bolt cutters and a pocket knife, you basically said.
Kitchen knife.
Yeah.
Big one.
And looking at your life now, you are a father. You are a husband. You're a business owner. I've actually seen you run quite a few businesses. You're a role model in our community, and I'm sure other communities, as far as business and things of that nature goes. So I kind of want to talk about that transition for you, because going from no ambition and then getting into recovery, where did you sort of learn to model this stuff? Or where did you pick up with ambition? Like, was it like, oh, at the sober living, now I'm the guy, because you said you did an inventory in your sexual deviancy sort of transition pretty quickly.
Yeah, that changed immediately. Once my unhealthy pattern was exposed and I was aware of it. I wasn't aware of it before, but literally like a switch flipped. I just behaved differently.
Yeah.
With in respects to finding ambition. So the first, couple of years of recovery was just chopping wood and carrying water.
Right.
Just learning how to do the daily thankless tasks of normal human life, getting on with the business of living and being a decent human being. And in that, I found my purpose in life.
Which is?
To be a good dude and help people.
Yeah.
That's really at the core. That's it.
You're fulfilling that purpose, dude.
Well, I appreciate that. That's what I'm up to. And in that's taken on a lot of different forms. But around 2.5 years of sobriety, I kind of came to a head with just being a good 12-step member and working a shitty job and not being in very good shape and not really bringing a lot to the table of life, and unable to really articulate it. What I think happened is after my dad died, my grandfather.
Your grandfather.
Yeah. He died when I was 18 months sober. And as I healed through, he died in Christmas time. So as I hit 2 years sober, like around that time, I was starting to manage that grief. And I came to the conclusion that I wasn't going to get loaded, that I wasn't going to return, that knot wasn't going to return to my stomach. And when that became apparent, that I wasn't done for, that my life wasn't over, and that I was probably going to live and I was probably going to stay sober as long as I kept doing this stuff, the very next thought was like, oh shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of work now. Damn.
I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm fucking 29 years old. I got no clue.
So what did you do?
I got busy with my sponsor. I got some pen and paper, and I started my first attempt at articulating what I wanted my future to look like. And I started reading. I became an avid reader. It's weird. Within a 6-month period, I became like this type A personality, and just I read a lot, and my work ethic got really good, and I joined a gym. I started a business. It wasn't like one day like, hey, I'm gonna go take on the world. It just, I was sick of being skinny fat, and so I joined a gym. And the girl I was with was like, "You're never gonna go," and I was like, oh, "I'm gonna try." So I'm gonna go do this.
Did you go?
Yeah, I still go.
Does she like your Instagram posts?
I don't know. I'm not. I haven't been in contact with her in a long, long time.
Yeah,
Actually,
dude. Because
I went.
hey, your Instagram, when you're in the selfie with your kids in the mirror in the bathroom and you got your shirt off, I'm like, dude, that's KO. That's a cute kid. I'm not talking about the little girls. I'm talking about you.
My 15-year post. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had these self-limiting beliefs about money and about family and about fitness and ultimately about my self-worth that I think got turned on its head. And there were a lot of things that played into it, and the result was a new ambition for life, a new hunger for life, to go out and push the envelope. And with a solid home base, a solid foundation of like, I'm going to be a good 12-step guy. I'm going to sponsor people. I'm going to try to be the best person I can with everybody I meet and try and help out as often as I can. With that as the foundation, and like, I was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I live in a shitbox anyway.
Right.
Like, why don't I just try and start a business? I can always go get another crappy job. It's not like I was taking these big risks.
On a daily basis, how do you not sort of fall back into whatever it was that was going on prior. Because I mean, for our listeners, what we hear is like, so you stop drinking, you stop smoking meth. Awesome, right? You're doing what 97% of the United States are doing. And then for you,
Welcome
it's
back to the living.
Welcome. But when I look at you, you're incredibly resilient. You know, like I don't remember a time, and you obviously go through things. And for you, how do you stay in this mindset that you're in right now?
It's self-fulfilling, just like the negative self-talk and the self-limiting beliefs. It works conversely.
Okay.
So when the creative process takes hold, it works. It works on pretty much everything. You think about something, you talk about it, and you do it. In 12-step recovery, we're taught the opposite, right? You act your way into right thinking. And with that, armed with that, I then was able to go out and start recreating through that same creative process in reverse, all kinds of new habits. So it was
Acting first.
acting first.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go to the gym even though I'm not in good shape.
Yeah, and be a pro.
Right.
And be
I don't know.
consistent.
I don't know where this is going to go or if it's ever going to go anywhere, but I'm fucking going today.
Yeah.
And you can't convince me otherwise. I'm going to go today.
Well, and then with family, because this is one thing that I've got to watch firsthand for you is when did you get married?
Got married in 2010, November.
How long do you know your wife before that?
Ooh, 3 years.
Right. You're one of the guys that's like, I knew.
Yeah. Not right away.
Okay.
But I knew when I decided to ask her, I knew. I was actually quite the little self-discovery process.
I remember
Becoming-
you and I had a conversation about a toothbrush once.
Yes, the toothbrush story. That shit's real.
Yeah. Well, and for me, you were a big advocate for me to shit or get off the pot. That's literally what you said, which I probably wouldn't use that
That's
term
so
anywhere else in my
It
life.
is very romantic.
But you were like, you got to make a fucking decision, man, because you're going to create a lot of harm here if you just keep dragging your feet.
Yeah, and that's what the toothbrush story is about. It's the same thing. It's like, are you going to commit to this? Are you going to give this the fair shot? Are you going to give this thing that you've been trying consciously to manifest for years? Are you actually going to go through with it? Because if you're not, you are going to create harm.
Give us the toothbrush story because people are going to be like, what's he talking about? It's a good story.
My wife, when we were just dating, we didn't live together or anything. She was spending the night more and more often, and she got up one day and she was brushing her teeth, and I was like, that's not my toothbrush. She's like, no, it's my toothbrush. And I'm like, what's your toothbrush doing at my house? Right? And needless to say, that created an argument that was like ended with her leaving and us not talking for a day. And in that, but that produced a conversation, right? That opened up the doorway of communication around, where do you want this to go? What is this to you? And we were both able to kind of ask and answer those questions. And the result was, well, then why don't we plan on start finding a place? And eventually we found a place together that we both picked out, and we lived together a couple of years. And then marriage was very similar. It was, I called my sponsor like, hey, listen, I'm at a place where I'm either going to break up with this girl and break her heart, or I'm going to marry her. He's like, oh, you're scared? You're scared of commitment? And I said, well, I guess I've never done this before. And I don't know that I'm ready to not be single ever again.
Yeah.
And it's not like I wanted to go out and whore around necessarily, but it's so much more than sex that we're talking about. We're talking about, like, you're married. We're talking about the finding a common ground on literally every aspect of your life.
Right.
There's nothing that's going to be untouched. It doesn't mean you have to compromise. It doesn't mean you have to be inauthentic, but it does mean you have to cooperate.
Yeah. And
And coordinate.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, dude. It's a lot. And anybody who gets married flippantly, just cavalierly, like, oh, we just love each other so much, like, yeah, good luck with that. Y'all better start talking.
Right.
And figure out if you guys are really compatible when things get messy, because life is messy.
Well, and did your grandparents, who are your parents, model for you what a good relationship was?
There are aspects about their relationship that are notable, yeah.
Right. Well, did you take that same ideology that you've been saying you've used, is like the action first, like, I'm just a good husband now? That's what I am now, and kind of learned, because I know you guys have been through some trials and I want to talk about them.
Sure.
But for you, it's like, how is this being in a relationship? How did you manifest knowing what to do, or you're just figuring it out constantly?
Oh, we're just figuring it out constantly.
Yeah.
And having the humility to listen when my partner opposes me, as opposed to just getting defensive. And that's easy to do, and I've done that many times, so I'm not going to say that I haven't.
Right.
But having the wherewithal, at least at times, to have the humility to say, okay, I'm listening to your feedback. In my head, I'm like, you're fucking wrong.
Right.
But verbally saying, okay, I'm listening to your feedback. And by the time she gets done talking and I calm down, it's like, okay, like, we can meet in the middle somewhere on this. This isn't as bad as my fight, flight, or freeze instinct is telling me.
Wow, yeah.
That's telling me you're wrong, but I'm listening to the words you're saying, and if I were in your shoes, I can see your point.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember feeling in fights that me and Becca have been in, the first time when I was like, oh my God, I'm completely wrong. And like, there was no way out of it, but admitting it, like I couldn't talk around it anymore.
It's healthy.
Like, I'm defeated, man. And I was like, everything I've been arguing about for the past 15 minutes, like, you're right. You're right. You're actually, I'm not just saying you're right. You're actually right.
And that's a muscle. The more you exercise it, the better you'll be able to use it.
Right.
You'll be able to use it when that's the accurate result, when you are wrong. Just be able to be like, shit, I was wrong on that one, honey. Sorry. My bad.
Deeply
What?
wrong.
Tell me the details of your side again, because I'm now on your side.
And maybe, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I'll have similar, experiences with my partner, and part of me will be like, I'll just be quiet and I'll listen and I'll hear to what she has to say, but like part of me's like, don't be a bitch. Don't be a bitch. Stand up for yourself. Do you have those voices too?
Uh-huh.
And do you realize that they're more than likely extremely delusional as well?
Yes, and here's an acid test that I've used over the years in multiple relationships, but obviously many times with my wife because we're so close. So I do the social engineering thing. When I have what seems like the beginning of a pervasive problem with somebody that I have to be around, mm-hmm. whether it's work or family or something like that, and it seems to not be going away, I bring awareness to it, like, okay, I have an issue with this person. There's an issue between us. I'm going to do everything I can to be completely benign and see if it still occurs. And I would say at least 50-60% of the time, it ends when I do that. And then it is like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's like, oh, fuck, I was in the wrong the whole time. I'm the bad guy. Evidently, I quit being a dick, and I was just neutral, and all of a sudden the problem went away.
You got kind of a Bruce Willis vibe.
And that's the thing I think about being a dick with people that you're close to. I don't think, at least for myself, I don't realize that I'm doing it. I'm just being me. I might be being assertive. I might be standing up for myself, or standing up or being passionate about a value that I hold in high regard.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I can socially engineer my behavior to just be kind of vanilla mm-hmm. with a person that I seem to have conflict with, and then the conflict disappears and we get along great, it's clearly an outcome that's produced by me. If I can retract and be neutral, and the problem continues to occur, then it's a problem with them, and my spider sense is right, and I can trust my intuition, and we can try to find a workaround.
No, that's a really good problem solving tactic that you have there. Is like, fix everything in you first and see if it still occurs, and if it doesn't, then you're probably partly to blame, if not all the way to blame.
Right, and I don't have to necessarily. And you said fix, and I don't. And not to be semantical, but I don't have to fix anything. I just have to not be so much, just not so assertive. Like, just kind of
be a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. I just need to not be a bitch about it. Just let the conversation play out, and not interject myself too hard.
And where's that come from? Because right, you've talked about awareness, you've talked about action. Now, does this come from reading? Does this come from trial and error? Where does this? Is it prayer, meditation? Like, what is it? What helps you come to this different social engineering kind of problem solving type of attitude?
It's all of those things. I think meditation brings an element of reverence and holiness, if you can digest that word.
Right.
And that's a tough one sometimes with people. But to me, that's what it feels like, reverence and holiness around human life. Because I didn't before. I didn't revere it at all. I was actually misanthropic before I got sober. And then kind of thrust into this world full of people that I realized I didn't mind were here. And then over time, what I've realized is that I actually love people. And human relationships are the most important part of my life. They literally make up the fabric of my experience.
I hate to transition, but we have 12 to 15 minutes, and I know that when you start to touch on the spiritual realm, what I really want to talk about is a little bit of adversity.
Okay.
And I know that you and your wife had been through a terribly tragic situation in 2015?
2014, yeah.
And so I want to talk about that a little bit, and then I want to come back to the spiritual side, because for me, I have, had my instances where I've had these existential crises in my mind where I'm questioning, where I am being a bitch, and I'm questioning everything. And when I look at some of the things that you've been through, being where I'm at currently, it's a terribly invasive question for me to ask, but I wanted to sort of talk about what you and your wife went through and see if I can bring it around to asking some questions about how you held on spiritually through all of that stuff.
Sure. So I'll predicate this little story with my brother Glenn died when I was about 2 years before I got sober. Right after I hit a year of sobriety, my brother Jack died. Jack is the one that I subconsciously have modeled my life after. Then at a year and a half, my dad died. Not my biological, my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I was 10 years sober, my son, which we'll unpack.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just before that, at 10 years sober, I lost my mom, who I had a strong relationship with, and then my son. And then just this year, Scott Wallace, my biological father, passed away. So 3 of my 4 legal siblings are now deceased, both my parents and our first child. And each one has been unique. Each relationship, the loss of each relationship, and how to manage day-to-day life has varied quite a bit between each of those. But with Shepherd specifically, so for anybody that doesn't know me or this story, my wife and I wanted to have a home birth. We planned a home birth. We did not have a doctor. We had a midwife and a doula. Our son was healthy. We had an ultrasound. We had a couple of ultrasounds. The most recent one, it was maybe at like 6 or 7 months gestation. Big, healthy child, male, which would have made my mom happy had she still been alive. I'm the last male Wallace in my family, and all my brothers had girls. And it turns out he had what's called a velamentous cord insertion. So it's where the umbilical cord would normally be connected at the very heart of the placenta. Instead, it was connected to the veiny membrane on the outside. So normally they're very weak. When your son is born, you'll be able to hopefully cut the cord, and you'll see firsthand how leathery, how thick that tissue is. But the veiny membrane on the outside is weak and thin. And so he got plenty of blood flow, oxygen, nutrients back and forth. But as he grew, at 8.5 months gestation, he rolled over in her tummy in the middle of the night, and it pulled the veins apart, and he suffocated in the womb.
How far?
8.5 months. He weighed as much when he was born as my next child, my daughter, did when we brought her home from the hospital. So it wasn't a miscarriage. It wasn't like, I held him in my arms for many, many hours. My sponsor and his wife came down and held him. Patty's my sponsor's wife. Patty held my son Shepherd in her arms for at least 2 hours. I mean, it was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to sit with. And we've had miscarriages before, just to be completely transparent, and those weren't necessarily easy, but by comparison, me being a male, not having had any connection, before birth, holding his lifeless body in my arms, a connection is formed. The possibilities, the future, and all of that vanishes. He was cremated. We keep him. He's in a tiny urn like this, and keep that in a picture of him right because I have lots of pictures of him. He was born. He has a birth certificate.
Yeah, I know.
But we keep him right on the bathroom counter, so I see his picture every day, and his younger sisters talk about him, and they ask questions.
So how did you and your wife do after that? And I don't mean to be insincere. I mean, I'm terribly sorry, and I've told you that over and over throughout a relationship. How did you guys survive that?
I want to say God, love for each other, love independently for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's losing anyone that's close, that you have a deep affection for, is very, very hard on the spirit. I've watched family members go through it. I've been through it. And most people, when you're in your 20s, or say even by the time you're 30, have lost a grandparent or something like that. To have lost someone really close to you, really close, is heartbreaking at this whole other level, that you don't get over it. It's not a breakup. It's not something that you move past. Those that have dealt with grief and loss all kind of speak the same language, and that's the healing process is one where you begin, however ineffectively, learning how to manage day-to-day life with a new normal, with a new default setting that includes a whole fuck ton of heartbreak. I mean, it's really that simple. You learn how to go to work even though you're heartbroken. You learn how to go to birthday parties and do Christmas. And
well, and you guys did more than that. You did more than just get back into life. You guys went back at it. You guys went out and tried to have more kids, and successfully.
We did. And I got to tell you, 7-8 months into our pregnancy with our first daughter,
Fuck.
Nicole looked at me and she said, "If this baby doesn't make it, I'm done."
Right.
And with tears in our eyes, and I said, "I get it.
Yeah.
I get it."
Was there a lot of maybe misguided isn't the right word, but just like nowhere to point anger?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
did it come across with the two of you, or were you guys able to kind of capture it and direct it the right way?
That's probably the best way to say it. I don't know that we did it the right way necessarily, but we certainly didn't do it the wrong way.
Yeah.
We didn't cast blame at each other. The blame wasn't inward at all, and we didn't really blame the medical community. There are ways we could blame. The person that gave us the last ultrasound, for example, his condition could have been detected on an ultrasound. It is detectable, but it's not looked for. Actually, the protocols, it's not something they look for because it's pretty rare. It's not so rare that it doesn't have a name or something. Like, it happens. Filamentous cord insertion is an unfortunate circumstance that happens to lots of babies in this country and around the world. But they don't look for it automatically. It's something that you have to ask for specifically. And believe me, on our subsequent pregnancies, we asked. We're like, "Let's see the placenta and the insertion point with the cord, please." They're like, "Oh, that's fine." I'm like, "No, it's fucking not fine.
Yeah, we're going to need more than it's fine.
I want to see high resolution."
Yeah, 1080p, 3D. I want to see this thing.
Uh-huh.
How long after was Everly born?
10 months. They're Irish twins. Irish twins, 10 months apart.
Wow, man.
He was May 26th. She's born March 11th.
Beautiful. You guys got right back into it. And how's everything now? Tell me about being a dad now.
Oh, it's amazing. I love being a dad.
Yeah?
Yeah. Firstborn gets the benefit of all of our attention. Also gets the disadvantage of no one to model after, except people that are so far advanced, adults. It's very difficult. And I see that play out in her younger sister, in Isla's, her little transformation. I call it little, she's just little. In her big transformation, as she's gone from being an infant to now being a toddler. She gets the disadvantage of our attention being divided.
Mm-hmm.
Not just between each other and work, but between another child that we need to care for and guide and love. But then she also has the advantage of she can model after this other little tiny person. So she's walking and talking at like lightning speed. She's
Yeah.
she's picked things up a lot faster than I really did. Not because she's any smarter, just because she has a role model built into her experience. Just always there. She's like, what's she doing? I'm gonna do that. And it's like, all right, cool. Don't hurt yourself. She's 4. You're 1.
Well, and has your purpose shifted? Like, how has that been for you? Because your purpose before was, I'm going to be a rad dude that helps a ton of people.
Sure.
Well, now you got these babies running around.
Yeah, so that it fits right in. I get to be a good dude, not just to my wife, but to my little ones.
Yeah.
And try to teach them how to be good to each other, how to be good to their friends, their little social circle, and how to be helpful. You know, we're at a tough age right now where being helpful that's not like a built-in thing. Very selfish time, the toddler years. But really, I'm hoping that over time we can impress upon them the huge benefit to society and to themselves to be helpful to people. That's what we're really hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we come to the end, and this thing flies by every time, I always get sad because it's like, man, we need another hour.
Why are we even finishing, dude? Let's just keep going, man. You're so strict about time, dude. Why don't you just loosen up a little bit, dude?
I want you to sort of give me a little bit of insight, give our listeners a little bit of insight on if someone's struggling, whether it was with alcoholism, like you were talking about, and I think it even parallels really well with the grief that you're talking about going through, is a little bit of hope, maybe a plan of action for somebody that's going through that stuff, so that our listeners can kind of hear it and go, wow, you know, this is a guy that's been through it, and if he's saying, you know, this is maybe the route to follow. I know you're not going to have perfect directions, but, you know, synthesize an ideology for us.
Well, one component I think that's healthy is going to be being able to process with other people. So, in processing with other people that understand, which can be a touchy subject. People don't like to talk about dead kids. So if you know someone, if you've lost a child and are struggling, you need to find somebody else who's lost a child or has lost someone close, so that you can talk to them and be able to bounce some ideas back and forth and banter those concepts back and forth. Because for me, there were big spiritual questions that had to be answered. I couldn't help but ask them. It wasn't like an existential journey, like, what's my purpose? What's going on? It was like, who the fuck is responsible for this? I want to know, is this a part of a plan? Is this the plan? Because if it is, I'm out of here. You get in the finger and I'm going to go eat a bullet this afternoon for lunch. Is this testing me? Same outcome. If this is a test, I'm done.
Right.
I'm done with your tests. And those types of questions have to be asked and answered. They don't have to be asked, but I mean, for me, and I can't imagine anybody else going through something like this, not asking those types of questions. And having somebody you can talk to that has been through it, I would highly, highly recommend, if you're going through real grief and loss, to talk to a licensed grief and loss counselor. Someone who's a therapist who can work through modality, take you through some progress that can push you, help you push yourself to a place where you can manage life again, because it can be debilitating. Losing someone close to you can rock your world in a way that very few other things can. And that would be the biggest thing. Find someone you could talk to. If you can find somebody that's a licensed therapist, that's ideal. Maybe a mix. On the flip side of it, finding your own relationship spiritually, maybe deepening whatever your relationship to the spirit of the universe is through that process, is what enabled Nicole and I to grow. You know, that's what worked for us, is we were able to ask and answer those questions and then build on that, versus you know, just blind faith in some plan or something like that. You know, because we're not Christians, so those answers weren't good enough for us. Those, you'll see him again someday. Really, I'll knock your teeth down your throat if you mention him again. Like, how about you not talk about that? I appreciate that you have a well-intentioned comment, because you see my pain, you feel obligated to say something, but just don't. Why don't you just tell me how your fucking day was?
How did you compartmentalize it? because you kind of talked about like you needed to ask those questions to get answers to it, but I haven't heard you tell me what your answers were.
Ooh. Well, for me, I found a deeper context for my concept of a higher power. And by my concept, I don't mean my God. I mean, I'm trying to take ownership of something. I've had a deeper understanding of the power that I relate to, which is the one power, which I think all religions have their own version of one power. Like right, we're all trying to take different paths to the same mountaintop. That's how I view spirituality, and for me, it got me further up the mountain. I don't know if that's too vague. I think, like if you think about step 3 when you're new, and you're like, how do I figure out God's will? And your sponsor's like, just don't do what's not God's will. And you're like, okay, I can kind of do that.
Right.
That's sort of been my spiritual path, especially after loss, has been, well, what is God? If God's going to get me through this, so to speak, what is God? Well, I don't have that answer per se, but I can also ask myself, is God testing me? And go through the pain of asking that question, and the answer I came up with is no. No, there's no test. This isn't a test. Okay, so did God take my son from me? That's another question I asked, and the answer I came up with was no. He wasn't stolen from me. He didn't belong to me to begin with. We're all children. We're all wild animals wearing Vans. We're wild animals wearing shoes. And nature is a beautiful and violent whirlwind of energy, man. Sometimes babies die. Sometimes people get hit by buses. Sometimes human beings subjugate entire other species for food production. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It's a gnarly thing that we're a part of.
Right.
This experience. Think about the poor chickens, man.
Fucking chickens, dude.
Dude, don't even
Don't get Chad
fucking started. I just cursed now, dude. Oh my gosh.
But but that plays a role in my view of spirituality. I hear people when they're questioning, like they're trying to get their arms wrapped around spirituality because they need to get sober, and they're like, well, how can there be a God if he lets all this stuff happen? I'm like, does it have to be in that tiny little framework of some puppet master Santa Claus that rewards and punishes? Are you capable of imagining or conceiving a different layout? Maybe it doesn't work that way at all. Have you considered that? Because the reason it's hard for you to wrap your head, for me, I won't speak for anybody else's beliefs, but the reason it's hard for me to wrap my head around that is because I don't think it fucking exists. I don't think it's real. I don't think that God punishes. I don't think God's a person. I don't think God is some dude with a naughty and nice list. I don't think that at all. I don't think he stole my son. I don't think he took my son. I don't think he's testing me. I don't believe I'm going to see him again one day. I believe that the energy that is in all of our bodies, in the bodies of these cats, the bodies of the grass outside, the electrons in the cement in the floor, everything, all comes from the same melting pot. That's what I believe.
The force.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I believe we're all droplets from the same river, and I believe we'll be returned to that. I don't think we'll ever leave it. But this experience that I'm consciously having, I think is a one-off. I don't know what I think about reincarnation. I don't know if I'll have another shot at this as some other person or some other animal or some tree or something. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. I don't care. I don't need the answer to that to get on with going to work today, even though I miss my son, because he'd be 5. He'd be in kindergarten now. I don't need the answer to that, but I do need to know if I'm being tested or if this is all part of I don't believe in predestiny. There's another gem I came up with out of this. I kind of did believe in predestiny before this happened. Everything happens for a reason. I was like, yeah, everything does happen for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
I see the synchronicity everywhere. It must be part of this grand plan. And that's fine. I'm not trying to knock that if that's what you guys, if that's what anybody listening, if that's been your experience, then great. I want you to see the synchronicities. I want you to see, to me, those synchronicities are less representative of a predestined or preordained plan and more part of a rhythm that happens, that's dynamic, that's happening now. That's part of a rhythm, and I need to sync up with the rhythm. That's where I find spiritual growth. That's where I'm not trying to just drown in the ocean, man. I did that for a long time. I'm learning how to surf. I want to ride the waves. I've been watching other people catch them for a long time, and I'm tired of just hanging out in the kiddie pool, man. I want to ride too. And that's where I see the growth happen.
That's beautiful, man. Thank you. Thank you for going so far in. I really, really appreciate it. And I think that listening to you, it makes sense to me how you're doing okay and still living. You know what I mean? Because, like you said, life can be incredibly tragic and violent and hard. But, you coming here and being as brave as you are is helpful.
It's also full of laughter and love.
There you go.
And music.
Right.
And a full fridge.
Full fridge. You like that line?
Yeah, dude. I do know I
Fridge
do.
full of food, house full of love.
Mm-hmm. Anthony, you're fired. Estil, you're hired. We're not going to do guests
switch
anymore.
it out. I'm going to be the first guest next week.
No. Listen, no guests, just Estil talking.
Oh, man.
That's it.
Just let him interview me next week, dude.
No, dude, get out of here, man.
Why don't you come over to Cornerstone? I'll interview for Cornerstone.
Okay, thank you.
All right, man. Hey, thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and all the other platforms. Don't forget about Bud Out e-cigs. Promo code last week out. Get your 20% off.
Yeah, pitch Cornerstone, dude. Let the people know.
Cornerstone?
Yeah,
Cornerstone Healing Center?
Get a free
Or
t-shirt.
are you talking about the cornerstone, the most integral part of a structure? Without it, it'll fall and just to ashes. Not ashes, it would have to be caught on fire, but to rubble.
Yeah.
Well, Cornerstone Healing Center, man, is a great place, dude. And I don't really know much about it, but I do know this. I know it's out there, and it's helping a lot of people, man.
Yeah, check them out on Instagram. Is it Cornerstone Scottsdale?
It's Scottsdale Cornerstone. If you come in, take a tour, you get a free t-shirt. They say fun shit like
Yeah,
sober
your shirts
AF or
are
heavily
sick.
meditated.
Heavily meditated, dude.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Mwah.
Thank you, Estil.
Thank you.
Seriously. See you guys next week.